Hello and welcome to Meet SRU Faculty. I'm Emily Sell, and today I'm joined by Melanie Anderson, Associate Professor of Business. Hello, Dr. Anderson. How are you today?
I'm fine, Emily. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So our first question is, when did you join the SRU community?
I came here in the fall of 2011, so I'm starting my third year here. And it's been a very exciting and fun 2 years so far.
I also came in the fall of 2011.
So we're here at the same time.
Yeah, it was a good year.
Right. It's a good time to come.
Right. So what brought you to Slippery Rock?
I had finished my PhD in 2011, defended my dissertation in April. So that was one of my reasons. I finished my dissertation. And I decided I wanted to see what I could do with it. Because I'd been at the University of Pittsburgh Titusville Campus for about 20 years and had earned my MBA before I started there. So I was a long time in finishing my PhD. It took about 5 years to complete it, and it seemed like a time to explore what I could do with it. So.
All right. So what classes do you teach here?
I teach 3 classes right now. Managerial accounting, I teach 2 sections of that, and all business students and some other majors take that course as a requirement. And for accounting majors, I teach intermediate accounting 2 and auditing. So intermediate accounting 2 is generally viewed as one of those hallmark courses in a major, one that's very tough, partially because there's so much material there. So it's the sink or swim type accounting course that students have to take.
Right, so you've got to be dedicated.
You've got to be dedicated, right.
So could you tell us a little bit about your academic background?
Certainly. I earned a Bachelor of Science with a major in accounting from Clarion University, which is one of the schools in the state system.
It's right down the road.
Right down the road, right. And got my first job after that. While I was working in my first job, a few friends and I from our company decided that we should earn our master's in business administration while we were working, which was a good thing because the company helped us pay for that. Not all of it, but they certainly did help pay for a nice percentage of that. And I think I earned my MBA in 3 years going part-time. So I went for quite a while with the master's degree. And when I was at the other school, I decided I should earn a PhD. And I wanted to earn it on a certain time frame before I reached a certain age. And I succeeded in that goal. And I earned my PhD from the University of Nebraska, which is a long ways away.
Yeah.
And it is in higher education administration with a specialization in leadership. And it was a great PhD program where I learned a lot of new things that I hadn't previously learned in my dedicated business degrees, and really, I think, expanded my horizons and my research skills, too.
All right. All good stuff.
Right.
So earlier you mentioned that you taught at the University of Pittsburgh in Titusville, is that right?
Right.
So could you tell us about your experience working there?
Certainly. I worked there for quite a while. I said 20 years, but part of that was a part-time instructor and adjunct teaching computer science courses, because accounting is well-versed in computer science. And then the company I was working for decided to move out of state. I had another job for a while and still teaching part-time. Pitt had a full-time position, which I applied for and started working there full-time. And I think it was a good place to work. The Titusville campus is one of the 5 branch campuses of the Pitt system. And it was really my first exposure to academia and the different roles that people play within the system as far as an instructor, an assistant, an associate professor, and a full professor, because that's pretty much standard across all campuses. But I learned a lot more about that, and I served a lot of different roles while I was there. Not only was I an instructor, but I also served as director of continuing ed. I served as assistant vice president of academic affairs. I served as interim vice president of academic affairs. I served as director of the business department, which was pretty small. And I had a lot of fun opportunities to work with a student group called Students in Free Enterprise. And over a period of about 8 to 10 years, they really grew and succeeded as a team and earned lots of awards, regional champions, and they went on to the national championship 3 or 4 years in a row. So that was a fun experience to work with students and see how they could grow this event, that they could learn about business, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, definitely.
And I also got to lead, I think, 3 study abroad programs to the Czech Republic.
Wow.
That was fun. That was
Yeah.
We visited 3 different cities in the Czech Republic, Prague, Brno, and Olomouc. Prague was always students' favorite because it was a very cosmopolitan city, a lot of things to see and do. And we had good tie-ins with business too. We toured some business places, including a brewery and a glass plant. The very last year we went to the Czech, we also went to Germany, and we visited Berlin and a couple of other cities. So it was a great experience for students to go on a study abroad program, I think, because a lot of students hadn't been outside of Pennsylvania. Some of them, it was their first airline trip.
Right.
So
wow, that's exciting.
it is exciting, and it was fun for students, and it was fun to see them grow and experience new cultures. So those were all great experiences at that position.
All right, so can you tell us about some of your other professional experiences? I don't know how they can top that one, but maybe they can.
They probably can, because each experience is different. I think students find that out too. You know, college is really fun, and then they're a little worried about going out to the workplace. But there's a lot of opportunities there. I worked at Quaker State as my first position out of college, and really I found that position because I worked as an intern there. They hired me as a summer intern, and I started out in internal audit. Internal audit does audits, operational and some financial, of the company that they work for. So that was really a great job as a right out of college job. I started as a staff auditor, and auditors get to visit the company's divisions. And Quaker State at the time was a Fortune 500 company with operations in the United States and Canada. So I traveled about half of my year on audits, probably a week in the office, then 2 weeks out, and then a week in the office writing a report. So you got to learn about all the divisions of the company, which was really a great experience. And I got to travel all over the United States, including great places like California and St. Louis and Toronto, and some places that weren't quite so great. My boss said it wasn't the end of the earth, but you could see it from there. Some really small places where we had refineries. There really wasn't a whole lot to do on your off time, because we stayed for a week or 2 or 3 at a time at these locations. So that was really good, and I eventually was promoted in that department to senior auditor, and then to computer auditor, because computers were just beginning to develop during the 1980s, and that's when I was working at this job. And my boss at that time was very progressive and integrated computers into the audit work. Each person had their own laptop, which was virtually unheard of in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Each auditor to have their own laptop. After a while, I decided to change jobs from auditing. Even though I really liked it, it was a lot of travel, and I went to work in accounting. So I have a lot of work in accounting and consolidations. I was the accounting systems manager, which we helped consolidate this company's 32 subsidiaries into their consolidated financial statements. And that included running their computer system, which they used a number of different software packages, including Computer Associates and Software 2000. And it was a lot of fun. I liked working with computers, and I liked the challenges that were presented by doing those things. So I worked there for a long time, 13 years. Then they decided to move the corporate headquarters from Pennsylvania to Dallas. And I really wasn't interested in relocating. Even though they offered me the opportunity to do so, I wanted to stay in Pennsylvania, where I had a good support system for my kids and my family. So I got a job at Warner Company. They were headquartered in Greenville, and they make aluminum and fiberglass and wooden ladders and aluminum extrusions. So I was working in a completely different department there. The department I was working in was information systems, and I was a business analyst, still working with the folks who ran the general ledger system and accounts payable and accounts receivable. But that was a great experience too, because Warner Company was not a public company. They were a privately held company. So it was a good experience to see the difference between how a public company works and how a private company works. Two completely different ways of doing things. So they were both great experiences, and it really helped me develop as a business person with those two sets of tools, really, that I gained in both jobs.
Right, so it sounds like if you're a business major, there's lots of opportunities out there for you for travel, for just doing a lot of really interesting things.
I think there are a lot of opportunities for business students, and you should be open to what kind of job you can take, and if travel is something you want to do, there's positions that can do that. I think your career also changes over time. You know, I started out as an internal auditor and then went to an accountant and worked in information systems, and now I'm a teacher. So your progression can change. You don't really know where life will lead you. You can somewhat shape that. I was really interested in computers, and that's kind of the way I went in working with accounting data. But you don't have to remain what you started out as. If that's something you didn't like, you can always change.
All right, that's some good advice.
It is good advice.
So you mentioned that you like computers. I understand that you're working on a paper that talks about how Twitter can be used as a tool to motivate business students. So do you think that social media can be a good tool to use in the classroom to aid in learning?
I think so. I got interested in this project because a colleague and I started doing some work on social media. We were looking at how you can use it, because a lot of students don't really, I guess they use, but they don't necessarily pay that much attention to email. And most higher education institutions, that's their main tool for communicating with students. You know, they send you emails about your bills and about classes and et cetera. And sometimes I think there's a lot of static there. You don't necessarily even open those emails or pay attention to them. I'm not saying you personally, Emily, but students. And I don't know that I blame them. That's become kind of a media that's sort of seen as outdated by students. So we decided to try to use some of the cutting edge technologies to see if that would make a difference. And I used Twitter in 2 of my managerial accounting sections, the same course, just at different times. And I found that the students where I used Twitter to help remind them about things like there's project due, there's homework due. If somebody was having a problem with an exercise I assigned, they might let me know, and then I would tweet out some hints to people who were still working on that problem about what to do. And I did see about a 6% increase overall in their homework scores, their test scores, and their overall grade. So I think it makes a difference. I think there was one downside. You know, there's always pluses and minuses. Some students viewed Twitter as something that faculty should not use because it was intruding on a tool that they used for other things.
I see.
But I didn't necessarily follow students. In fact, I didn't follow any students. All I wanted them to do was just to follow my account, and then I would issue my tweets about things only regarding the class.
Right, because I'm sure students had the concern of their personal tweets crossing over with their class tweets and their professionalism.
Right, so I didn't really want them to, all I wanted them to do was follow me, and then I didn't follow any of them.
Right. So in 2012, you were awarded the Summer Research Grant. Could you tell us a little bit more about that project?
Sure. That's another project that I really am interested in. It is an extension of my PhD project. My dissertation project was on cosmopolitans versus locals and how that impacts future chief academic officers. So my research project was on cosmopolitan versus locals and how management accountants are influenced by those different latent social roles and how it impacts their ethical decision making. Latent social roles, or roles that we really all have, influenced by three factors: our loyalty to our organization, whether it's school or your workplace, whether you focus more on professional groups outside the organization, or whether you're more involved with people inside the organization, and a third factor about how you relate to your peers in the organization. So those factors, you're either classified as a cosmopolitan, someone who is very focused on their professional role, is somewhat loyal, but they're more loyal to their profession than they are to the organization, and they have friends outside the organization. Versus a local is someone who is very focused on the organization, is very loyal to the organization, and not so much engrossed in things outside the organization. It's okay to be either one. It's just a matter of which role you are and how it might impact some things that you do. So I think I found that most of the management accountants I surveyed were of a local orientation and more committed to their current organization than to their professional roles. And their ethical decision making was also influenced by that, because they would make decisions that impacted the organization. And they always kept that as their top priority, more so than their professional roles. So it's an interesting thing to study.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been great to have you and meet you and everything. So
You're welcome.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Great to be here.